Mr. Cisna, you're a lawyer. Please define for me the concept of prosecutorial discretion.
I believe, and again, we're kind of stepping outside of my world of expertise, but it is the decision by a prosecutor to not go after, to not prosecute somebody either because of lack of resources or other legal policy that they're following.
And for instance, this administration widely exercises policy discretion in not making arrests for marijuana possession, correct?
I don't know anything about that.
You don't know anything about that?
I am not an expert in the Department of Justice's exercise of prosecutorial discretion at this time.
So as far as you know, the Department of Justice is prosecuting marijuana defendants with the same rigor that they are the border crossers in terms of prosecutorial discretion. You actually don't know that that is not a true statement?
Truly, I do not know what the prosecutorial discretion policy of the DOJ is with respect to marijuana violence.
But you know it's not 100%, don't you? You know that they do exercise prosecutorial discretion. Don't you simply know that as a human being?
Yes, I would assume it's not 100%. Right?
Okay, there you go. So that was, so it's not absolutely necessary simply because the law is in place, setting aside your conversation over the civil measures. It is absolutely not necessary to prosecute every single asylum seeker who crosses the border in the wrong place. You could simply not do that in the proper exercise of prosecutorial discretion.
I suppose you could, but I don't think that would be a good idea. I think
I understand, but my point is that you could. That's what I wanted to ask you. So asylum seekers, they're often refugees, correct?
Asylum seekers fall under the same definition of refugee at 101A42, yes.
Yep, and they often have very little in the way of resources. They're often frightened, correct?
Yes.
Very few have legal degrees or are familiar with United States immigration law, correct?
Yes.
And so if you're a lost and frightened refugee and you see the U.S. border and you think, this is my chance to get across to safety, which has long been something that our country's been associated with, there could be a perfectly innocent reason for crossing the border in that location. And in that circumstance, would it not be perfectly reasonable for immigration officials who intercept them to say, you seem to be a legitimate asylum seeker, you're just in the wrong place. We'll take you to the port of entry, and you can join the other asylum seekers at the port of entry. But to arrest them and separate them from their children is a different choice, correct?
Well, I think if the person is already at that point where they're apprehended and making their asylum case known, they've already crossed into the country illegally. If they've already crossed the border and made their asylum claim, they've already violated the law. They violated 1325. They're here illegally.
Because they crossed in the wrong place.
Correct.
And they may not know that it's illegal to cross in the wrong place, correct? They may simply be coming here because they're poor and frightened and seeking safety, and for a long time, that's what the United States has been a symbol of, has it not?
I cannot get into the minds of the people that are crossing the border illegally, but it seems to be...
But it is a clear possibility that there could be an innocent explanation for crossing the border as an asylum seeker at a place other than an established port of entry.
There might be.
Okay, there you go.
Maybe.
We're getting there. So what activities are underway within your department to try to discourage asylum seekers from showing up at the proper ports of entry? We have heard reports that immigration officials are trying to prevent asylum seekers from getting to those ports of entry, either by working with officials on the other side of the border to stop them or by stopping them before they can show up and present themselves. Is that going on?
Truly, Senator, nobody is coming up with ways to prevent asylum seekers from coming to the ports of entry.
You're sure of that?
No one in my agency that I know of is doing that, and I wouldn't tolerate that. It is not unlawful to request asylum. And
how good do you think it is for the United States of America, for the world to see images of us keeping children in chicken wire cages and to hear the tapes of crying children who've been taken away from their parents? How do you think that works for a city on a hill?
I'm no expert in public relations. I couldn't speculate on how that is viewed or how our position is regarded.
No, you couldn't possibly reach a conclusion that that might actually be a bad thing for our country to have that image in the world? That's not a credible position in your view?
Depends on what the image is and what's being portrayed about what we're doing.
In meetings that you've had with the administration, have you heard people say that this policy has been imposed in an effort to send a message to asylum seekers to discourage them? Or have you heard anybody say that this policy has been imposed to try to gain bargaining leverage in legislative negotiations?
No to both things.
You have not heard those things said in any meetings you've been in?
No, what I've heard said is that...
It's odd because we have administration folks actually saying that publicly, so it would seem a little strange that that wouldn't come up in a meeting when they're saying that publicly.
No one is trying to discourage or deter asylum seekers from presenting their case for asylum. They can do that. They can do that at the port of entry. No one is telling them not to do that.
My time has expired, Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I think we're wrapping up here. We don't seem to have any other witnesses. I'm the acting ranking member, and I just wanted to put into the record the conclusion by the American College of Physicians, quote, "A policy of universally separating children from their parents entering U.S. borders will do great harm to children, their parents, and their families." And more specifically, the American Academy of Pediatrics, which says that separating children from their parents quote, "contradicts everything we stand for as pediatricians, protecting and promoting children's health. In fact, highly stressful experience can cause irreparable harm, disrupting a child's brain architecture and affecting his or her short and long-term health," end quote. And I would just point out that we're hearing an enormous amount about this separation policy out of the administration. We're hearing, for instance, that the law brooks no discretion, which is simply not factual. We're hearing that the Bible made me do it. That was Attorney General Sessions. We're hearing Democrats made me do it. That's President Trump. We're hearing there is a policy, and it's to deter people seeking to come to our borders. That was the Chief of Staff. We're hearing there is a policy, and it is for negotiating leverage. That's both the President and his person at the White House, Mr. Miller. And then we're hearing from the DHS Secretary, there is no such policy. All those things can't be true. This just looks bad. It is a mess. And nothing about all of those explanations looks as bad as the image of children behind chain link fences under Mylar blankets and the sounds of them crying in captivity. And if this administration doesn't get that that is bad for our country to have those images out there as what America represents, I don't know what hope there is for dealing with this with the administration. So I think that opens a lane for doing things as members of Congress and as members of the Senate. I very much hope that we will. The person who is probably smiling the most about this, perhaps other than the president himself, is probably Vladimir Putin, our great rival, who loves to see America take a bad punch in the nose in its image. And I think it's very unfortunate that we are here with this circumstance.